Complete Deckheads.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Complete Tech Heads podcast with me, Tom Edwards. Thanks for joining me again. I quickly want to just shout out some of the wonderful commenters that I've had, particularly on X, who have said that they're listening to every episode and that they're really enjoying the content. Lots of great feedback on my last episode with Lyle AI, who I thought was really awesome and is a lovely man. And just want to kind of take a moment to shout out the community around AI that seems to be growing. There seems to be lots of positive vibes going on, which is giving me great cause for optimism as we navigate this wild world that we find ourselves in, that I'm trying to kind of decipher with this show. So thanks. This week I am speaking with another very interesting person, a man called Thomas H Chapin IV, who I found through this this digital community, who is very interested in using technology to expand the human lifespan and, more importantly, the human health span. So we touch on lots of different things here. We talk about the challenges of extending human life, how long it's supposed to go on for, and what the answer might be to making that time span longer. We talk about maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We talk a bit about intermittent fasting. Talk about Bryan Johnson, the world's most measured man, who is a tech entrepreneur who has turned his talents to trying to extend his own lifespan. You may have seen him in the news. Very interesting guy. So I thought it was a great conversation. Thomas is a very, very nice man. He's clearly got a lot of different experience in the technology world. He says himself he is, he comes at it from a tech standpoint. He's a developer. He's not a doctor, so please don't take any of this as medical advice. Obviously, speak to your physician or your GP if you're a Brit like me before making any changes to your lifestyle. Certainly don't do anything on the basis of anything I've said, but hopefully you'll find it very interesting. I certainly did, and it certainly made me think twice about some of the lifestyle choices that I make or that I might want to make in future in order to enable me to reach escape velocity in terms of my own lifespan. And if you want to know what I mean by that, you'll have to listen on, because we cover it in great depth on the show. So without further ado, here is what I hope will be very interesting conversation with Thomas H Chapin IV.
Complete Deckheads.
Hello, friends. Today I am here with Thomas H Chapin IV for what I hope will be a super interesting conversation about AI in health, longevity, aging, and how we can cheat death with the help of machine learning. So, Thomas, wonderful to have you on. Thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on. This is the first podcast I've ever been on. So,
okay, amazing. Well, I'll go easy on you. So look, I would love to. So I know you're very interested in the health span, age, age-defying implications of AI. But I would love to get a bit of a background into you first of all. So, like, what's your experience? What kind of angle are you coming at this from in your background?
yeah, sure. So I don't want to go tell you my whole life story, but the rough summary. I come from a large family, homeschooled. My mom had a degree in elementary education. My dad had a degree in computer science, but then he became a preacher. So, like, I have this super religious, homeschooled background from the Bible Belt. But I first started getting into computers when I was around 10 years old, and I ran my own bulletin board system. I started like my own little security hacker group with like 1,000 members, and I was like a white hat hacker when I was like 11 to 13, and I experimented with trainers and all this, and so I was really into like a lifestyle of learning. I really liked just learning and hacking on things and teaching myself as I went, and I got into web development when I was around 13. I actually got hired at a web development company.
At 13?
At 13.
Wow, that's good going.
Yeah, that was a lot. I'm 40 now. I just turned 40. So yeah, then I basically got hired on full time when I was 16 and spent like 20 years, the last 25 years really, working with web development, and it's been just kind of a long career in that regard. And I've worked with all sorts of technologies, but most of the technologies and things I worked with were web based. Building web apps, things like that. Everything from PHP to Ruby on Rails and whatnot.
Okay.
But recently, in the last 5 years or so, actually, really last 10 years, I saw kind of things moving toward AI. And so I went and got a job at a place where I could learn Python, because I saw Python was being instrumental. Seemed to be where things were going. So I went and I like to learn on the job. So I got a job learning Python. And yeah, so I dabbled with AI, learned a bit about it in the education space. And I guess over time, I'm trying to think, well, I didn't really see the conversation. I'll be honest, I didn't see conversational AI coming. It kind of caught me off guard, about a year ago. LLMs and whatnot really surprised me. It actually kind of put me through a little bit of a existential crisis. When I first saw computer programming being done by AI, and knowing that I had just spent the last, my whole life basically trying to become a computer programmer, and then seeing an LLM program, it was just like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
So I actually took a year off because I've been working since I was 13. I'd literally never taken a break. And during this last year, I've been trying to answer the question of what happens next. What should I be focusing on in life? And it came, I guess my conclusion is health, longevity, aging, all of these things that are most likely going to cause the deaths of me, you, and our loved ones. If all of our jobs are going to be taken over by AI eventually, what should we all be working on? Skate to where the puck is going, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of become my passion over the last year, and I've just been immersing myself in it. I've been following the news just nonstop about AI, and I started a community on Twitter, now X, called the Healthspan Longevity and AI community. And we've got a number of people in there, CEOs and whatnot of biotech companies, and a lot of other AI enthusiasts and longevity enthusiasts. But I'm not an expert. I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not an expert on the health side of things. I'm a computer programmer, and I'm not even like a high-end computer programmer. I'm like a web developer, but I have always prided myself on the ability to learn and dynamically duct tape things together, kind of like. So I'm like, well, what would happen if I took this kind of mindset that I have with hacking and learning and whatnot, and I applied it to solving the problem of cancer or aging and death? What is it that I can do to help? So that's the really long-winded.
Yeah. It's so you've built this community of people who are similarly drawn to, I guess it's solving aging, right? Is that the goal here?
So yes and no. Really, I'm mostly just. I just want to stay alive. I don't like how.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's almost kind of Like, don't we all? You know, same, same. I don't want to die either.
Uh,
It's like the most fundamental certainty that I think the reason I'm laughing is because it's almost like AI is now like making us question even the most fundamental certainties that we have. You know, even death is in question now. Like, you know, it'll never be able to reason. You know, it'll never be able to tell a joke. It'll never be able to, you know, understand nuance.
I'll
It
never
just
be
keeps
able to draw
breaking
a
them down.
picture. Never be able to play.
Right? Yeah, yeah. And then it's like, well, it's you know, there's still got there's still this one certainty that we're all going to die. And hey, guess what? Maybe not. Maybe the robots will solve that as well. It's just kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Exciting though.
yeah.
It's such an exciting time.
I ran a poll on Twitter about I don't know if it was like 9 months ago, but it was something to the effect of, you know, if you think that aging, or if you think science and AI, or how long do you think it'll take until we figure out how to beat death? Do you think it'll take 1,000 years, 500 years, 100 years, 20 years? And
Yeah.
almost everybody I polled, and it was like hundreds of people responded to the poll, but almost everybody agreed that with the way technology's been exponentially increasing, we're definitely going to have the problem cracked within 1,000 years. I mean, almost anyone you talk to would agree that surely we will have cured cancer within 1,000 years. Surely we will have technological advances that will have helped us beat all these different things. So it's like at that point, it's just a question of, well, how do we make it happen sooner?
Mm,
And are you okay with missing the boat?
yeah. Is there not though? So I get that I think it's entirely reasonable to expect that AI will cure cancer within, I don't know. My guess would be 50 years. Cancer won't be a thing anymore. You know, if medical science continues at the pace I think it's going to. But like, I think it might even have been Elon Musk who made this example, but someone on Twitter anyway, X, said that, you know, like humans are only that they'll only live for us, you know, around about 100 years, regardless. Like if you solved every, you know, dog disease, you couldn't make it live longer than 30 years because that's just the lifespan of a dog, right? Like if you solved every fruit fly disease, it's still going to die within a day because that's just how long they live for. Do we not have a lifespan that's kind of not immutable, but like beyond which life just there's just becomes kind of, I don't know, death
Yeah.
will find you, you know, like it's
Yeah. So I guess, and obviously keep in mind, I'm not a medical expert. So I'm just a lay person talking about this, and I'm sure I'll make all
yeah.
sorts of mistakes. But
Sure.
as I
I guess you're running this community though. I'm interested in your thoughts. I'm
um,
not going to hold you to it or
yeah, I'm just saying that for the sake of your podcast listeners.
sure.
Um, I My understanding is that a lot of these diseases are actually caused by aging, in the sense that when your body starts to break down and it starts to, or yeah, it starts to no longer be able to properly repair and maintain itself. That's when it becomes susceptible to a lot of the diseases. That's when they start to creep in and start to multiply. The body actually has the ability to repair itself. And there is all sorts of research being done on, what happens when your when your cells become senescent, and they cease to function. Um, well, as they die off, they release chemicals and things like that end up harming nearby cells. Um,
Yeah.
and there's research that's been done where by targeting senescent cells that were just like building up in your body, by removing them, basically having the body remove the senescent cells themselves, that and I guess a senescent cell means a cell that has lost its ability to divide and replicate. Okay. So when these cells get certain to that age and they stop being able to replicate, they just kind of sit there, and then eventually they degrade and die, and they harm nearby cells. This is just my understanding. I could be wrong on this. But by enabling the body to clean up these senescent cells, they were able to massively extend the lifespan of mice. I can't remember exactly what the number was. I could go look it up, but it was a significant increase, maybe like 20% or something. And so then that makes you kind of question, well, wait a minute, is our lifespan actually hard-coded? Well, if everything is perfect and you had perfect immune system, all this, what is it that's preventing the human body from living longer? Is it the telomeres at the end of things? What is it? Is it some sort of genetic marker that has to be flipped? Is it something like there's jellyfish that can live immortally. There's lobsters that can live essentially indefinitely. There are a number of life forms that do exist that are functionally immortal. So we know it is technically possible. And really, the answer is we don't know what it would take, but there's also the idea of like a ship of Theseus approach, where you could systematically replace the parts of the body that were dying off. Like what happens if you were to replace your heart, your lungs, your whatever? What happens if you're able to partially replace neurons in your brain somehow?
Yeah.
What if
That's the big one, isn't it? The brain is you can kind of imagine, like if you're talking philosophy, like you can kind of imagine you being the same person with a new heart, new lungs, new kidneys, but like your brain, I feel like that's the essence of you, right? Like that would be the one where if you replace my brain or uploaded my brain like a simulation, then that is no longer me. That's how I would feel. Like, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, one of my most popular tweets in the past couple of months was something where I said something to the effect of, a digital twin is not immortality.
Right. Okay.
Making it
so it has to be. You have to have some of the.
I want an uninterrupted thread of consciousness. I don't want to die and then be resurrected. I don't want to die and be cloned. I don't want a digital twin that lives on for millennia while I die. Like, that doesn't do me any good.
No.
And
so someone else gets to steal your thunder, don't they? Some other digital. I guess it would be Thomas Chapin V.
I do actually have a son by that name.
Ah, the sixth then.
So I don't know what that would be in that case, but
the 001.
Version 2, V2.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a clone is, in my opinion, it's kind of like a twin. Twin is not you. But I agree. That is one of the number one issues, the crux of it all. And it's also one of the big things I think that's holding back longevity. It's all these people that are getting older, and as they get older, their mental facilities decline. They start to adopt more. Well, not all, but there's a common theme of mental patterns changing and worldviews changing, and people becoming more focused on conserving resources and become less, risk takers and things like that. And so your mind changes. A lot of people's minds change as they get older, and people are afraid of a future where you have these immortal people that are just holding back the rest of humanity and just like feeding off of it, and kind of like they're imagining a lot of the dementia addled people, you know.
Yeah, it sounds.
And
So I hate to
just
say it, but it sounds a bit. I hate to say it, but it sounds a bit like the USA now.
there's yeah, and it's concerning because you see these people in politics just kind of holding us back, and there's people that are like, well, you know, science progresses one death at a time or something. They it's all they have to die before you can progress, you know. And I would love a future. I would love to see a future where that's not the case. One where we can solve Alzheimer's, where we can solve dementia, where we can repair damage caused by strokes, and um, and trauma to the brain damage. If there's a way for us to repair brain damage and rejuvenate it, do things like removing lead poisoning, heavy metals, and repairing the damage caused by them, restoring neuroplasticity, things like that.
Yeah.
Basically, I think if we were able to take an old brain and gradually restore it in a transitionary way, not like an instantaneous kind of way. If we were able to restore youthfulness and mental clarity to an old person's brain, I think a lot of the fear of immortality would go away. And I'm not even really saying immortality. I mean, more, I say immortality is a loaded concept. You know, I'm just saying longevity, you know.
Yeah. I guess it's the idea of death being a choice, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not that, because there obviously there's going to be the heat death of the universe eventually, and you know,
Maybe.
like yeah. That's the next one to solve, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess it's the idea of being able to choose when you die and being able to live for significantly longer spells of time than the human lifespan that we've come to understand over the course of our evolution to date, right?
Right. And like my great grandmother lived to almost 104, and the last 20 years of her life were just absolute misery. You know, every time I saw her, she was like, you know, I can't wait to die. You know, she just couldn't wait to die, but God wouldn't take her, you know. And she was too healthy. I mean, ironically, she was in misery from pain. She had fallen, broken bones. She had osteoporosis, all these other things. But mentally, she was like, she exercised her whole life and ate healthy her whole life. But so she was in this weird, cursed place where she was in pain and couldn't die, and she lived way longer than she wanted to. And that's why the concept of healthspan is so important, because if you have longevity without health, then you're just going to be prolonging your own misery and suffering.
Yeah, I mean that's hell, isn't it? That's hell.
Right.
Like longevity. The more you ramp longevity up and health down, it's just making life.
So
horrendous. Yeah.
the only thing I'm really interested in is longevity paired with health. Like I want to be able to, I want to live in my prime in a healthy way for as long as I want, basically. I don't know how long that would be, but I want to live as long as I want. Now, will that be solved before I die? I don't know. Probably not. But if I can at least help move the needle, maybe that's a meaningful life work.
Yeah. Are you aware of Bryan Johnson, the entrepreneur? Is he in your
Yeah, some of
community?
my most popular tweets have been tweets where I interacted with Bryan Johnson.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, like 25,000, views and whatnot. But Yeah, no, I love what Bryan Johnson's doing, and he's very controversial. He gets a lot of attention for um, controversial things he says, but if you actually go watch his video interviews, he's really a calm, thoughtful,
Yeah, yeah. I've
caring
watched
kind of
interviews.
guy.
Yeah,
Go on.
he's good. He seems very clear-headed about the whole thing. He seems like he's just thinking in his mind, and who am I to judge? I think he just believes he's thinking much further ahead than anybody else, right? He's trying to push the needle on what's going to be important in 50 years' time, rather than push the needle on what's going to be important in 6 months' time, which is what most of the rest of us are doing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's modeling the behavior of somebody who wants to attain longevity escape velocity, and is doing everything in their power to do that. Have you heard
Yeah.
that term, longevity escape velocity?
No, but I mean it makes sense. I thought you were just using it as a turn of phrase.
No, it's
Is
not
it a
my
thing?
idea. It's there's people. I want to say it's Aubrey de Grey who came up with it, but it may have been someone else. There's a number of other
Okay,
people, George Church and whatnot. But um, the idea is, as technology increases, our knowledge of things that extend our lifespan increase. So if you can live long enough, then there's this intersection point where you will theoretically be able to live indefinitely if you can just reach that point.
got to
You
cling
can live
on,
long
cling
enough.
on until you get to the event horizon, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. And yeah, look, I mean, I look. So some people say he looks, because I feel like he gets judged a lot on the way he looks because it's really the only data point that most people have to go on. Um, and some people say he looks awful, and then other people say, "Oh wow, he actually looks really young." And I just kind of feel like he looks unusual, which kind of makes me think that something is definitely happening.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, so um, he's doing things to modify his appearance. And I don't necessarily know if those appearance related things are improving his chances of longevity or if they're just making him look younger.
right,
And he's doing all
okay,
these
okay,
skin treatments and things with lasers and all that, and it makes his
right.
skin look more young. But from what I understand, some of the treatments he's doing are actually causing the cells in his skin to like flip and become like flip to their youthful state.
Right.
And so I can't really speak to all that, but he's doing a bunch of experimental things, which might hurt him in the long run, but ultimately he's experimenting on himself and he's not risking or harming anyone else in the process. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm a big fan of what he's doing. I wish I had the money and resources to do the exact same thing that he's doing, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if I did, I think I'd struggle. It seems very um, regimented, right? Like he needs to go to bed at like 8 p.m. every day, and like he only eats between like I can't remember exactly, but he only eats first thing in the morning, right? And then doesn't eat for the rest of the day. And I think I'd, even if I had you know millions and millions to do it, I think I'd struggle because I'd want to go out every now and then and have a beer,
Yeah, no,
like
well, the interesting thing is senescent cells, right? One of the things that can cause your body to remove senescent cells is fasting because your body essentially auto cannibalizes itself, and the
right,
first thing it
right,
cannibalizes is those senescent cells. So, by doing intermittent fasting, by doing a calorie restricted diet, you can get a lot of that, a lot of those benefits. But you can extend your lifespan by helping your body get rid of those cells. If you just sit around and you're fat and a bunch of senescent cells are going to be all there, and your body, when your body's trying to look for energy, trying to clean up stuff, it's maybe going to target the fat and leave the senescent cells there. So you have all this inflammation and stuff, and damage and cancers and things that happen. So one of the biggest things you can do that anybody can do to help improve longevity is weight loss. And I used to weigh 250 pounds, actually. If I showed you a picture of myself, I'm now down to 168. So
Wow.
over the
Amazing.
course, over the course
Congratulations.
thanks. Over the course of about 4 years, I've just like my chart's just been slowly going down. And I did a lot of that via keto and intermittent fasting and calorie restriction. But
Yeah.
there's this one thing that Bryan does that it was like a light bulb moment. And it's the fact that when you're hungry, food tastes really good. When you're like hungry. And so a lot of people, if they just go from meal to meal and snack to snack, they aren't really appreciating the food they're eating. So they try to amp up the signal by eating more sugar, more unhealthy foods. Well, if you fast and you go and then you put like some sort of vegetable in front of yourself with some olive oil and a little bit of salt or something, and it's just like, oh, this thing is so tasty. It's because you're hungry. And so he has systematically leveraged that in his whole diet so that he loves every bite he's eating, even though it's just like a bowl of lentils or something. And there's something there that I think is worth noting and exploring.
Yeah, totally. And I have experimented with intermittent fasting in the past. I mean, I've not really ever struggled with my weight particularly, but even so, I have felt really good. Like I do get it. Like you do, it is a good thing to do for sure. And I have heard, about the positive effects on longevity. So aside from Bryan, what are the technologies that are going to push us in the right direction on this? How do you think AI is going to help? What kind of technology are people working on that's really going to push the needle?
So obviously there's the big institutional stuff like Google, DeepMind, AlphaFold, and those are really high impact due to the amount of money and everything being put into them.
We should just briefly explain AlphaFold is the protein folding system that Google's DeepMind has built.
Yeah, so Google supposedly advanced humankind's knowledge of proteins by something like 1 billion years worth of researcher man hours. If you were to take a researcher, put him in a lab, and have him research this, it would take a single researcher 1 billion years to accomplish what they've managed to do with AlphaFold. And that's kind of those are one of the big things that that's an example of something that has really made me think something might be possible. We might actually be able to do this, and we might actually be able to cure disease. We might actually be able to do all that, solve aging. And it's not just AlphaFold though. There's Recursion is working on similar stuff with proteins, and there's a number of other companies as well. I don't have them all listed, but I have a huge map of companies that are all in the AI space working at health, and it's just like hundreds of companies. But some of the other big things that I'm excited about is something that Siren Biotechnology is doing. They're doing universal AAV immunogene therapy for cancer, and they're solving certain types of blindness. They're solving, basically by leveraging viruses and using by what's right, they're building tools like almost like little machines that have logical capabilities, if then or else type stuff.
God, wow.
And
To what, microscopic? Wow.
essentially, yeah, and they're able to do just amazing things. And this
So
is
they're
just like,
little tiny robots with logic that you can
and
inject into.
and they can do targeted type stuff. I mean,
Jesus.
there's a whole lot of really interesting stuff coming, and a lot of it is being made possible via these technological improvements in AI and whatnot. Because if we are able to build a model, a complete model of the human body and how it works at the microscopic scale, nanoscale, whatever, and then we're able to use AI to generate machines to perform certain types of work to tackle diseases, and cure them. I mean, all bets are off, you know.
Yeah.
So there's this other aspect to it, which is the consumer grade AI. There's AI doctor tools. There are like Dr. Gupta AI, and that's a play on GPT, but it's GUPTA, not. And it's they're like his assistants.
It's brilliant. Sorry. Yeah. I enjoy wordplay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dr. Dr. Gupta. Anyway, sorry. You were saying. So doctor assistants. Um, yeah. So there's a like I think a lot of these tools are becoming more and more commonplace. Like my wife checks moles with an app that is reference it. It's like it's got you know image pattern recognition for worrying moles, and which is it's apparently got a very high degree of accuracy. Obviously, it's not replacing a human doctor, but it can tell you when you might want to go and see one. I
Right.
suppose there's going to be something like that for every conceivable condition.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the long term vision, the thing that would be really cool is if every single human had full diagnostic live streaming results of their own body's chemistry and health state. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's going to be accomplished via some sort of, like little implant, or if it's ever going to be done with something with some wearable devices, or maybe a combination of devices. But, you know, people like Bryan Johnson, they do all these, he's like supposedly the most measured man in history or whatever. But imagine being able to instantly know everything from your glucose levels to your insulin levels to the fact that this organ over here is being strained a little bit, or maybe it's not producing enough of this hormone, or
Yeah.
there's your something that could tell you what your current brain chemistry levels were. There's a whole lot of potential there. There's mobile imaging. Imagine being able to do almost kind of like a live MRI of yourself while taking a shower or something. I mean, who knows what's coming? But I'm kind of going off on tangents here. The actual AI stuff that I'm interested in, or been really looking into, is, about it. It's all about taking information that is hard for a doctor to memorize, and making it very accessible. You could, when you have an AI chatbot that can pass the entire medical, every medical exam, and it knows every single medical book and all the knowledge that you can imagine. Well, Google has the Palm model, for example, the Palm E2, I want to say, and only medical people have access to that. Like I don't have access to it yet, but combine that with something like a knowledge graph, chatbot, and live diagnostics, and every single person would essentially have like a doctor at their fingertips. Now combine that with something like a home robot. Think Bicentennial Man. Imagine if you had your own personal robot that could help you as a doctor, could maybe even perform minor surgeries. Who knows, right? Like maybe that's a little too sci-fi, but
I mean, I feel like every week, whenever I do a podcast or a video, I feel like I'm forever saying, if this might sound a bit sci-fi, but it's nearly here, you know, and then inevitably, it turns up like a couple of months later, you know. So yeah, I think, you know, we are living in sci-fi. The whole world around us is sci-fi, you know. Like if we're in the Jetsons, man, you know, like literally, it's the computers are talking to us, you know. Like the Turing test is in the rearview mirror by this stage, I think. You know, sci-fi is now, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah. So,
yeah. So what are some of the most interesting things that you have heard about recently in this field, since you're interviewing a number of people and you're also
well,
stuff?
I mean, I speak to people about lots of different things, but in the health side, that was why I was keen to speak to you, because I found it, came across you on Twitter, and I hadn't considered the applications of the most recent kind of wave of AI tools in health and longevity. Obviously, I'd heard of Bryan Johnson, and I had been aware that there was this sort of movement growing. I mean, so there are, like, I've read a bit about brain-computer interfaces, Neuralink, and like BrainGate is another one which is super interesting. Like, they put electrodes up through the actual blood vessels in your brain, and then they leave them there to monitor activity, which seems interesting, and that can obviously bypass a lot of spinal problems, right? So any kind of serious brain-computer interface will allow people, paraplegic people to have limbs again, and like the BrainGate footage is incredible. Like, this is a woman who's just like using a robotic arm to grab a cup and bring it to her mouth and drink from it. It's incredible. So that's it's medical science, but I don't think that's necessarily going to add to their longevity. It might, the BCI stuff might, eventually give us those digital twins that you were saying you're kind of, less interested in. But it's not particularly useful for extending our lifespan, which, as I say, I didn't really realize was possible. But yeah, so I mean, so what are the... So we've mentioned disease. You've mentioned like these senescent cells. Are there any other big hurdles or roadblocks that we need to get past using technology, and if we want to get to death is a choice?
Yeah. So I actually asked ChatGPT this question earlier. Cheat a little bit. I mean, the reality is there's a bunch of stuff. There's there's stuff that's currently under development in terms of senolytics, telomeres and telomerase, and there's people that are doing rapamycin for the mTOR pathway.
I've heard about the mTOR pathway, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so it I guess, as I understand it, it regulates growth, and it's kind of been linked to lifespan. I don't really know the whole lot about it exactly. I know that a lot of the people who are in the lifespan kind of scene, people like Bryan Johnson, are taking rapamycin,
Right.
In an attempt to extend their lives. I haven't done that myself. I haven't really done a whole lot of actionable stuff. I guess my on it is I don't really think that we as humans are going to solve this problem on our own. And so that is why so much of my attention has been focused on AI. I have, over the last year, I've been focusing a lot of my attention on sharing ideas with people that are on the cutting edge of AI. So I went on Twitter, I went and befriended a bunch of the people who are in San Francisco that are working on AI agents and on AI tools. And they'll release some new tool. I go on GitHub, I start their GitHub repo, I fork it, I tinker with it, whatever. If I have an idea that's relevant, I'll sometimes share it with them. And so I thought two of the biggest things that are holding us back are philosophical. Philosophy and religion, and kind of like deathism, the idea that death is good, I think is a big problem, especially in America. But I mean, around the whole world, everyone's coping with that idea and has accepted it and everything. And so they're not dumping enough research into beating the problem, to solving the problem. They're just focusing on the immediate things in front of them, like maybe cancer or something. Well, so the other thing is AI. So if we have AI agents and we have AI tools that can help us solve the problems, what can I do to accelerate that in a safe way, right? We don't want the world to end because, a drone army has taken over, like Terminator or something. So I spent quite a bit of time researching AI safety, and I was involved with David Shapiro's community with the Gato framework, trying to come up with ideas for how can we usher humanity into a post-scarcity reality in a positive way. What are we going to do about all the jobs that AI might take away? How are we going? I mean, what good does solving longevity help you if only the rich people have access to it? What good does it do if you solve death or aging, but then you get killed by a mob of people who are angry about wealth inequality? So there's a big complex problem with a lot of facets. And so some of the other things that I've tackled are, how are we gonna solve that? Do we need a universal basic income? Do we need some type of universal dividend paid for by AI automation? Because
do you not worry that the UBI thing, that there would still be a dearth of purpose, that people might get money but they might still feel unfulfilled?
So, fortunately, I don't have to guess on this, because there have been a number of studies now and experiments that have been run. And there's a famous guy on Twitter named Scott Santens that I'd highly recommend checking out. He has been compiling just a ton of information about UBI and its benefits and all the experiments and all the different projects that have been run on it. And they overwhelmingly show that when people are given a universal basic income, it essentially it makes them go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then instead of just focusing on the immediate problems in front of them, they're able to think big picture. They're able to do things in life that matter to them and that have meaning. And they overwhelmingly choose to do positive things and
feel happy.
And and it increases their happiness. It increases, and it actually does increase their health as well. Wow. So
you're very much pro UBI then?
I'm pro UBI, I don't know exactly what implementation is the ideal implementation. I don't know. So I'm pro UBI. I'm still in the UBI conversation phase right now. But there is one project that I am actually a founding donor member of, and that's a project called Commingle. And they're currently raising money for their first phase of development. And their idea, and it's kind of like the idea that I was spreading around myself, was if we can't convince the government to do taxes to do UBI, what would happen if we just built it ourselves? Voluntarily built it and had voluntary participation. And
Wow. So what? So people just pay money in.
yeah, so at least, and I'm not in this, once again, this is kind of like one of those things where I'm not entirely sure if their first attempt is going to be viable, but the important thing is they're trying, you know.
Sure.
And so their concept is kind of like a church. You know, if you go to church, a lot of times they'll have tithing, and then the people.
I don't, but
Yeah.
I have been. I went when I was
You're familiar with how tithing works in a church, in a lot of churches. People will
actually no. Is that when they pass the bowl around and you put the money in?
yeah. Well, and it's not like that, but a lot of churches they expect their members to donate a percentage of their income toward.
Right. Okay.
Okay, and then the church doles it out or uses it, however, to further their missions or whatever.
Okay.
Well, in the case of Commingle, everybody who joins the project actually pledges to donate 7% of their income to it.
Wow.
And they actually link to your bank account and do tax audits to make sure that 7% of your income is being donated. Now, on the flip side, every week they give out an equal average payout to everybody. So if everybody earned $100,000 a year and everybody donated 7% of it, every week they would receive their exact amount of money back. There would be nothing out, nothing back. It would just basically be even, an average net even. But if you have somebody who's earning $1 million and you have somebody earning 10,000, well, that average payout is helping the person who's poor, and the person who's really rich is barely even noticing. But it does. But if something happens to the rich person, and now they are bankrupt or something happens, now that average payout they're getting every week is maybe helping them float along until they get back.
It sounds quite a lot like taxation and social security,
It's-
but not the government doing it.
It's not the government doing it. It's just what if we built it ourselves and had participation be voluntary? So it's like the church without the church, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Tithing without the church.
Yeah.
This is really just a big experiment, right? And to me, I think a better universal dividend would be one where they weren't monitoring your bank account and where the profits were coming from AI automation somehow. But I think it's a stepping stone in that direction, you know. I would love to work on.
Yeah, I guess it's what you want to do is harness the productivity gains from AI and distribute the winnings more evenly amongst the population than is likely to happen. Because currently, obviously, all of the value from AI is going to Microsoft and Google, right? Basically those two. I suppose the idea is what you want to get to eventually is to somehow harness more of that value and distribute it to people who haven't got a data science PhD from Stanford or whatever,
Well, and it's a hard problem. It's a problem I've been kind of like mulling over now for a while, and I still don't know the answer. But I'm very interested in it. Like, what if it was possible to accomplish via some sort of open source model with a software license, for example? If instead of producing a bunch of open source AI tools and models, what if you were to license them under a universal dividend license or something that dictated that if you're going to use this software, it's free to use, but any profits you make with it, you are agreeing to donate some percentage back to this big fund or this fund. And then that fund or the funnel or whatever, every single human has an equal share. The only thing you have to do to get your cut is prove that you're a human. That's it.
Yeah, it's getting increasingly difficult now.
And it's basically just like a human fund or an AI dividend, or I don't know what you want to call it, but
yeah, I mean, the problem, of course, would be that if all you had to do is prove you're a human, there'll be lots of people making bots that are quite good at proving they're human and then raking in all of the...
Yeah, this leads to like the whole next challenge, which is how do we tell all the humans from the bots, and how do we do that in a way that doesn't like violate everybody's privacy and doesn't institute like this whole like Big Brother reality, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, interestingly enough, that's one of the problems that WorldCoin, I think, is trying to solve, kind of like the idea of anonymized proofs of personhood.
And they're doing that with eye scanning, are they?
Yeah, so their idea that they were thinking with it was if we scan someone's eyeball, their retina pattern, there's enough entropy and stuff in that pattern that's hard to fake with an AI model, to where you can use that fingerprint as a way of generating kind of like a one-directional decryption scheme that is anonymous but still provably human and also unique. So, and it's a complex, difficult problem. I mean, there's other things that you could do. You could take a 3D scan of someone's face, for example. You could take a drop of their blood or something. You could take a drop of spit. You could do. There's all sorts of ideas, and of course, like the better they are, the more intrusive they are.
Yeah. Yeah, it starts getting pretty scary pretty quickly, doesn't it?
But even so, there's still a lot of know your customer type stuff that crypto has to do. All these crypto exchanges have done a pretty good job of cutting down.
KYC, know your customer, is a huge and thriving industry in its own right.
Yeah,
like there are loads of companies who are constantly coming up with intriguing and innovative ways of identifying people. I suspect that a lot of the ways that they currently do it are going to become obsolete quite soon. Like, I don't know if it's the same in the US, but if you sign up with the neobanks here in the UK, often it asks you to film yourself saying, my name is whatever, and today's date is whatever. That's all going to be quite easy to fake quite soon, isn't it? With with AI tools. So they are going to have to come up with something better than that.
It's almost like we're approaching a future where you won't be able to trust anything except in-person experiences.
Yeah. And then it makes you question even that, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe. There's a whole bunch of people that subscribe to the worldview that everything is just a dream, and that everyone is a bunch of NPCs except themselves, and
simulation.
This is all just a simulation. This is all the Matrix. But the only thing anyone can really know is that they exist. I think, therefore I am. That's the only thing you can objectively know, I guess. But I could honestly ramble on about a bunch more of this for probably.
I think we're going to have to wrap up quite soon. But I was going to say I'll have to get you back on. We'll have to draw up a whole nother list of interesting subjects, and we can ramble on about those, because it's been really interesting talking to you. And I'm certainly keen to learn more about your health span longevity community that you're building on X. I'll be sure to submit my application because I'm certainly keen to learn more. But before we wrap up, is there anything on that subject, the health span longevity stuff that you feel I haven't covered or haven't asked you that perhaps I should have done, or anything interesting that I'm missing? And you don't have to say yes. Maybe I've been the perfect interviewer and covered everything. But
Oh no, this has been a lot of fun, this interview. First of all, I will say this: the healthspan community that I have, it's pretty low key. It's an open community. Anyone can join. You can join. If you look me up on Twitter, x.com/Tom Chapin, and go over to the highlights tab, there's a link there to it in my highlights, and anyone can join. It's pretty small right now. There's only like around 150 people. But anytime I find something really cool and interesting related to AI and health span longevity stuff, I try to post it in there. And if anyone else has stuff they want to share or post in there, they're obviously welcome to, as long as they keep it on topic. So yeah, I'd love to have you in there.
awesome. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there then in that case. But look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Tom, and yeah, I hope to speak to you again very soon. Thanks for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Complete decades. Well,